Hello biology students! I wanted to create a video that will show you how to do Punnett squares that show two traits. Many of you have had trouble with this and we haven't had a lot of in-class time to practice this. So let's take a look at how to do these. Now the good news is you're probably not going to see one on the end of course exam, but you do need to know how to create these. All right, so let's begin by looking at this particular problem. I've created a Punnett square here that has 16 boxes because I know we're going to be looking at two traits. When we looked at one trait, remember we had 4 boxes, but here we're going to have 4 squared combinations, so we're going to have 16 of these boxes that we're going to fill. Before we begin, let's take a look at the traits that we're looking at down here at the bottom. Tall is dominant to short, and yellow is dominant to green in these particular plants. So when we talk about the plants and the traits, what we usually use is a big T for our dominant. So let's write this down here so we know what we're talking about, because we're going to get lots of combinations here. Little t equals short, and big Y is yellow. Little y is green. Now it says that we're going to cross 2 plants. Both are heterozygous for each trait. Well, what does heterozygous mean? Well, hetero means different, and so that means they have different alleles for each trait. So each plant is going to have this genotype. Now what we're going to be looking at here is every possible combination of those. And so what we're going to be doing is putting every combination of those 2 alleles next to the sides of these boxes. So let's take a look at one. We know that each one of the sex cells, because that's what we're doing, we're putting down what's going to be in the sex cells that a potential offspring could have. It could either have a big T or it could have a little t. Okay, so that's the different combinations of T we can have. Now, we've got big Y for yellow, or it can be green. And so we can have yellow with the big T, or we can have yellow with the little t. We can have little y green with the big T, with the tall, or we can have it with the short. All right? So that's every possible combination of those 2 traits that that particular parent can produce in its gametes. So let's take a look at what this is going to look like. I'm going to fill in the other parent because it's the same. Right? So there's the possible combinations for each parent plant. Now we do our Punnett square exactly the way we did them with the 4 boxes, only this time we're going to have 4 traits in each box. So let me go ahead and do this and fill these in. Big T's, big Y, little y. And keep these organized because they can get confusing. Okay, so we're going to, again, looking to each trait. Now notice how I'm bunching the traits that are similar together. So I'm doing the ones for height together and the ones for color together. I'm keeping those separate in that way. Just kind of a way to organize the traits so they're not so confusing when we have to go through and determine the percentage of each genotype and phenotype. Little t, little short plants. Big T, little t, that's going to be a tall plant. But it's going to be green. No, it's going to be yellow, isn't it? Big T, little t. I also put the dominant trait first, regardless of where it is. Remember, this is a new plant organism here that we're drawing. Okay, there we go. All right, there's all of the possible genotypes for our plants that we could possibly have. So now let's take a look at the percentages of each type. Let's start out by looking at homozygous dominant. So it's got all the dominant traits. Look at that box and see how many of those do you see. Well, there's only one right here. So that means 1 out of 16, or 1/16, is going to be homozygous dominant. All right, let's take a look at another one and get a different color here so it's a little easier to see. This one's homozygous dominant for height, but heterozygous for color. So let's just kind of cruise through here and see if we can find any others that look like this. Here's another one. I think that's it for those. So that means 1/8, because it's 2/16, are going to be homozygous dominant for height, but they're going to be heterozygous for color. All right, let's take a look at the next one here. Just kind of go down the line. This one's heterozygous for height, but homozygous dominant for color. So there's that one. And let's see if we can find another one. Here's one right here. All right. So again, 1/8 are going to be that same combination. So let's take a look at this next one. Oh, this one's heterozygous for both. Oh, there's one there. There's one there. There's one there. And there's one there. So 4 out of 16, or 1/4, are going to be heterozygous for both traits. All right, moving along, let's take a look at, let me get another color here so we can see the different traits. What about homozygous dominant for height, but heterozygous dominant for the color? There's only one of those. That's only one I see. You see any other ones in there? I'm not seeing it. So only 1/16 are going to be homozygous dominant for one trait and homozygous recessive for the other trait. Alrighty, moving on. Let's take a look at this one. This one is heterozygous for height, but homozygous recessive for color. There's 2 of those. I think you guys kind of see a pattern here. This is going to be a little wide. And let's get a different color here. This one is homozygous recessive for height, but homozygous dominant for color. Oh, only seeing one of those. T, Y, Y. All right, and then we've got these 2 here, and those are going to be our homozygous recessive for height and heterozygous for color. And then last, but certainly not least, we've got this little guy right down here. And he is 1/16. He's homozygous recessive for everything. He's a short little green plant. All right, so here are all of our different combinations. We've got, unless I've doubled up one somewhere, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different possible combinations. There's 9 possible genotypes. 9 possible genotypes. Okay? How many possible phenotypes do we have? In other words, how many combinations could we have? Like they could be tall and green, they could be short and green, they could be short and yellow, or short and green. So we have 4 possible phenotypes. Okay, 4 possible phenotypes. And our chances of being a homozygous recessive is going to be 1/16. And that's the one that was asked about on your test. So hopefully this has made this a little bit easier to understand. Please contact me with any questions, and I will be so happy to help you with this. And I think after you practice it a few times, it's really not so hard, just lots of letters to keep up with. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.